I always thought her silence meant peace. Turns out, it was just distance. She used to disappear into the woods every other weekend, saying she needed time to reset. She'd pack up her Subaru with yoga mats, herbal tea, and that damn poetry journal she always carried but never seemed to write in. I never questioned it. I'm a wildlife ecologist. Long stretches of solitude are part of the deal in our house. Or they used to be. Looking back, I should have felt it. Noticed the way she'd returned from those weekends a little too light, too floaty. Her hug smelled like pine and bourbon, not patchouli and mint like she claimed. I ignored it because I wanted to believe we were still what we used to be, two nature-bound souls chasing meaning in a modern world. But the truth was colder, and much closer than I ever imagined. The beginning of the end came in the most ordinary way. I was looking for a flashlight in her car. It was late September. Power went out at our cabin in Rockport, just one of those flickering outages coastal Maine gets when the wind rolls in from the harbor. I'd run out to the garage in my socks, cursing myself for not charging my headlamp. Her car was parked outside because mine was still loaded with gear from a site survey I'd wrapped that morning. I opened the back hatch, flipped up the seat, checked under the floor panel, nothing. So I reached under the driver's seat, and that's when I felt it. Cold. Slightly sticky. Duct tape. That second phone wasn't even hidden well. Just a beat-up old Android, like something bought off Craigslist with cash. I peeled it from its hiding place and just stared for a few seconds. It vibrated in my hand before I even pressed a button. A message lit up the screen. W, counting down the days. Got the good scotch this time. You bring that wild side of yours. There was no lock screen. No password. Like she wanted to get caught but couldn't quite admit it. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the thing twice before I got it open. The message history stretched back months. Flirty texts. Photos. One blurry image of a wooden cabin with string lights and two whiskey glasses clinking by a fire. I could barely breathe. Not because of the betrayal, not yet, but because of how routine it all looked. Like it had been going on for a long time. Like she was living another life on a schedule. I should have confronted her right then. I should have screamed, shattered the phone against the pavement, demanded the truth. But I didn't. I put it back, taped it carefully, closed the trunk, and then I waited. Her name's Nina. We met 9 years ago on a trail cleanup project outside Bar Harbor. She was sunburned and covered in mosquito bites but still outworked everyone. The woman had dirt under her nails and poetry in her voice. I was hooked. Back then, she used to write me notes on leaves. Literal leaves. Birch bark sometimes. She'd sneak them into my hiking pack. Little snippets about the way I moved. The way I looked at trees like they were people. I fell hard. She made solitude feel like a shared language. I proposed to her on a boulder overlooking a kettle pond in Baxter State Park. We built a quiet life, part-time forestry consulting for me, community wellness classes for her. She taught breathing workshops and guided, rewilding retreats for burnt-out city dwellers. Her vibe was always halfway between earthy wisdom and slight mystery. I thought it was beautiful. Turns out it was just good cover. After I found the phone, I didn't sleep that night. I sat on our deck with a blanket wrapped around me, watching the fog roll in off the bay, and started cataloging the inconsistencies. Her scent. The cash withdrawals. The way she started bringing her own retreat food instead of buying groceries. The sudden switch to prepaid data cards for emergencies. How she didn't want me to join her even once, not for a weekend, not even to drop her off. It had always seemed like her sacred space. Now it felt like enemy territory. The next day, I called in a favor. My buddy Aaron, a quiet, loyal type who used to do GIS mapping with me for state parks, now worked in private security in Portland. Not exactly the surveillance type, but he knew people. I didn't tell him everything. Just said I needed help finding a cabin, probably north of Bangor, maybe west toward Rangeley. I gave him a few details from the text messages I'd memorized. He said it might take a few days. I told him I had time. I didn't ask Nina anything that week. I watched her, studied her movements like I was logging wildlife behavior. She'd hum when she texted him. Not to a tune, just a soft exhale through her nose. Like a quiet celebration. I wanted to grab her shoulders and scream, "Who are you when you're not with me?" But I didn't. Because I wasn't ready. I wanted the full picture. By the next Friday, I had a plan. Aaron texted me a pin, a rustic rental property on private land near Greenville. No listing online. Leased through an old-school caretaker who only took cash. No cell service nearby, just satellite Wi-Fi. That matched. He even found a drone shot, same cabin, same string lights from the photo I saw on the burner phone. She left like clockwork that Friday morning, kissed my cheek, told me not to forget to check the compost bin because the raccoons had been getting into it. She smiled and left. I waited 2 hours. Then I packed a bag and followed her. 3 hours later, I was parked on the edge of a gravel turnoff about 50 yards from the cabin. Her car was there. So was another one, a red Toyota Tacoma with a custom rack and a cracked taillight. I sat there in my truck for a long time, watching the smoke curl out of the chimney. At one point, I saw her silhouette pass in front of a window. Then another figure behind her. Bigger. Male. I didn't get out. I didn't confront them. I just watched. Took photos. Logged timestamps. That night I drove home in silence, my hands gripping the wheel so tight I couldn't feel my fingers. Here's the strange thing. I didn't feel the devastation I expected. It was more like a quiet reshuffling. Something inside me, something old and rooted, started to move. This woman had built a separate life. A parallel reality. She looked me in the eyes, laughed at my jokes, traced my scars with her fingers, and all the while she was slipping away to this man, to this place, where she got to be someone else. Someone wild. Unaccountable. The ache would come later. But that night, I just felt strategic. She came home Sunday night, smelling like firewood and peppermint gum. Good weekend? I asked, watching her set down her bag. She smiled. Yeah. Quiet. Needed it. I nodded. I'm glad. And I meant it. Because the quieter she got, the more I could hear what was really going on. There's a moment in every ecological survey when the landscape reveals its truth, not all at once, but in clues. A split hoof print in soft earth. A broken branch. The faintest trace of musk left by a passing animal. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. But it's there if you're patient enough. That's what the next 2 weeks felt like. Watching the terrain of my marriage betray its secrets. Nina didn't change anything. That was the most surreal part. She came home from those weekends softer, gentler even, like she felt renewed. She'd curl up on the couch beside me, ask about my field work, hum to herself in the kitchen while chopping vegetables. As if nothing was different. As if she hadn't just spent 2 days pretending I didn't exist. But I had changed. I was no longer looking at my wife. I was tracking her. I started small. Quiet. Measured. First, I began logging her mileage. I noted the odometer every time she left, every time she returned. I knew the rough distance to the cabin, 170 miles, give or take. Her car was always within 5 miles of that estimate. No detours. No spontaneity. Just a routine betrayal, down to the last turn. Then I got into her laptop. I didn't want to. I told myself I wouldn't. But one afternoon while she was showering, I sat down and opened it. Her password was still our anniversary. What I found wasn't scandalous, it was clean. Too clean. Email folders emptied regularly. Browsing history scrubbed down to nothing. But no one's that tidy unless they're hiding something. Even her calendar was vague. Retreat, wellness weekend, solitude. But one note stood out. A Dropbox folder labeled simply, RW Cabin. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. Not of him. Not of her. Of the space itself. The bed. The porch. A book on the nightstand. But in every photo, there was one thing I recognized that she had never mentioned, a beaded bracelet I made for her in our second year together. Black onyx and cedar. She wore it once on a hike and told me it was too stiff. There it was, wrapped around a whiskey glass, sitting beside a fire pit. Her totem. Her tether. Not to me, but to that other life. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I made a call to a property records office in Piscataquis County. Took some digging. But I found the landholder who owned the plot the cabin sat on. A guy named Frank Harmon. Retired civil engineer who now leased out rustic properties to weekenders and tourists. I told him I was interested in a long-term rental. Wanted to know about availability, past leases. He was polite, cagey. Said they didn't keep names on file long-term. Then I asked casually if the couple who'd been renting the cabin near Moosehead Lake was still on the schedule. I'd heard good things, I said. He paused. Said, "You mean the yoga lady and the guy with the truck?" Bingo. I asked if he knew how long they'd been coming. He chuckled. "Oh, they've been regulars a while. 3, maybe 4 years now. They like it off-season. Quieter. Less eyes." That last part stuck with me. Less eyes. I hung up, my hand cold against the phone. For years. 4. I did the math. She started going on these retreats right around the time her brother died. I remember holding her in our kitchen after the funeral, thinking the grief had hollowed her out. That she needed space. That was the first time she told me she wanted to be alone in the woods for a weekend. It wasn't grief she was running from. It was me. I stopped sleeping. Not in the dramatic sense. No pacing at 3 a.m., no open-mouthed staring at the ceiling. I just couldn't go still. My mind kept moving, strategizing, playing back conversations I'd thought were mundane and seeing the patterns I'd missed. The excuses. The slight shifts in tone. It wasn't just infidelity. It was theater. She crafted a full performance around it. And I realized something. Nina wasn't reckless. She was calculated, controlled. Which meant if I wanted to do this right, I had to be even more controlled than she was. So I set up a trail camera. I told her I was studying fox migration patterns near the cabin we co-owned with my uncle in Waldo County. It wasn't unusual. I'd done studies like that before. She even helped me carry the equipment to the edge of the woods one morning. But this time, the trail cam didn't point at wildlife corridors. It pointed at the road, the one she took to disappear. I had it programmed to send burst images to a secure cloud account every time a vehicle passed. Infrared enabled. Time-stamped. High resolution. The next time she left, I got her departure at 7:12 a.m. And at 9:59, I got another hit. A red Toyota Tacoma. Same cracked taillight. Same man. 2 nights later, I called my older sister, Grace. She lives in Connecticut, runs a small law practice, mostly family law and estates. We don't talk often, but she's sharp, ruthless in her own quiet way, and loyal to the core. She knew Nina. Loved her. Called her the calmer version of you. I didn't start with the whole truth. Just said I needed help reviewing some marital asset scenarios. There was a pause. Then her voice shifted. What did she do? I told her. Grace didn't gasp. She didn't curse. She just asked, how long? For years, maybe more. Then she said something that stuck in my ribs. She built a second life. That means you don't just leave. You dismantle. We talked about options, legal angles, property splits, the cabin, our accounts, how Maine's divorce laws treat hidden assets. She sent me a list, things to collect, things to avoid saying. When we hung up, I felt like someone had just handed me blueprints to a controlled demolition. The turning point came the next Friday. She left like she always did, warm goodbye, tote bag over her shoulder, bracelet on her wrist. I watched her drive off. But this time, I didn't wait long. I followed again, but not all the way. Instead, I parked at a general store halfway up Route 15. Waited. Watched. And at 10:22 a.m., he pulled in. The man from the cabin. W. He was taller than me. Muscular. Bearded. Maybe late 40s. Wore a canvas jacket and looked like the kind of guy who built his own fly rods. He went inside, came out with bourbon and trail mix, and drove the same route she had. Straight toward the cabin. I stayed just long enough to confirm the direction. Then I went home. That night, I drafted a letter. Not a confrontation. Not yet. Just a question wrapped in clarity. Nina. I know about the cabin. I know about W. I know this has been going on for years. I haven't decided what happens next, but I wanted you to know the fog is gone. I see everything clearly now. We built something real. Or at least I thought we did. I'll never fully understand how you manage both lives, but I do understand this. You chose someone else over and over again. I'm not angry. Not yet. But I am awake. And when I move, I won't miss. I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I printed it, folded it once, and slipped it into the side pocket of her favorite bag, the one she always takes to the cabin. She came back Sunday night, humming again. Compost been still giving you trouble? She asked, hanging her coat. I smiled. Nah. Raccoons must have moved on. She laughed, kissed my cheek, said, see? You're lucky when I leave. And in that moment, right there, with her lips brushing the corner of my mouth and her eyes full of that familiar warmth, I understood something devastating. She thought I was still asleep. She had no idea the avalanche was already moving. Nina found the letter on her next trip. Not right away. I'd buried it under a half-zipped pocket in her travel bag, slipped between a folded sweater and that damned poetry journal. She would have reached for it Friday night, maybe Saturday morning. Maybe with her hair still damp from a shower in that rustic, pine-scented cabin she shared with him. I wasn't there to see her read it. But I imagined the moment in perfect detail. The slow unfurling. The way her breath would hitch. The recognition that the game was up. Not loudly, not publicly, but in the most dangerous way possible, silently. She didn't text. Didn't call. Didn't come home early. She played her part through the weekend, likely unsure how much I knew, how deep the wound went, or how sharp my response would be. She didn't know I was past the heartbreak, that what lived in me now was something colder, more surgical. Sunday night, she walked through the door exactly on time. Her coat still carried the scent of wood smoke and juniper. "Hey," she said softly, eyes scanning mine like a probe. I looked up from the book I wasn't really reading. "Hey." There was a long pause. Then, "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, you." Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She was reading the air, trying to detect a shift. I gave her nothing. No twitch, no sigh, just calm stillness. She walked toward the kitchen and paused at the edge of the room. "I found something," she said finally, voice low. "In my bag." "Oh," I said, not looking up. "Did you write that?" Now I looked at her. I did. Her face was blank for a second too long. Then she sat across from me, fingers laced tightly on the table, like she needed to hold herself together. "Can we talk?" she asked. I closed the book. "Sure," I said. "Let's." What followed was one of the most surreal conversations of my life. She didn't deny it. Not outright. She danced around the word affair like it was a hot wire. "It wasn't about you," she said. "It wasn't personal." "I was your husband," I replied. "How is that not personal?" "I mean, it wasn't a reaction to anything you did. It wasn't revenge. It was just..." She trailed off, then tried again. I felt trapped, like I didn't have permission to be unpredictable anymore. Unpredictable. That was her word for lying, for sneaking, for vanishing into the woods to sleep beside another man while I chopped firewood and checked raccoon traps. "I never stopped loving you," she added. I laughed at that. Not cruelly, just lightly, like someone who hears an echo and realizes how far they've wandered from the source. "Love," I said, "isn't supposed to look like hiding." Then I asked the question I hadn't asked yet. "Who is he?" She flinched, like she hadn't expected me to want a name. "Will," she said eventually. "He's a carpenter. Lives in western Maine. He helps maintain the cabin." I raised an eyebrow. "And you've been helping him with that maintenance for how long?" She didn't answer. That was answer enough. She didn't beg, didn't cry, didn't fall apart like I thought she might. Instead, she asked if we could rebuild, if this could be a turning point, if we could go to therapy, write new rules, reclaim trust. That's when I knew she was still playing chess, still trying to stay 3 moves ahead. I told her I needed space. Time to think. She agreed, said she'd stay with a friend for a few days. She kissed my forehead before leaving, as if that gesture still belonged to us. Once she was gone, I pulled out my notebook. The plan had begun. Step 1 was isolation. Not for her, for me. I needed to detach from the idea that I was still part of a we. The house was quiet without her, yes. But it was also mine again. I cleaned out her meditation room first, packed her candles, her floor cushions, her collection of tiny hand-carved animal totems. Every item went into a bin labeled Nina, storage. I slid it into the garage and locked the door. Next, I secured the evidence. The phone under the seat, the GPS logs, the photos, the camera footage. I backed everything up 3 ways. External drive, encrypted cloud, and a private USB I mailed to Grace with no return address. Just in case. Then I documented finances. Turns out, she had a separate checking account. Not illegal, not even shady on its own. But the deposits were irregular, mostly cash, some Venmo payments labeled energy session or retreat add-on. She was making money under the table, likely renting the cabin out for her own side business. A few of the names matched clients I knew from her wellness workshops, people who'd paid for solitude and got something else entirely. Grace called it what it was, unreported income. I called it leverage. Step 2 was exposure. Not public, not yet. Just enough to control the narrative when the time came. I started by meeting with a mediator. Framed it like a trial run, just in case we go down that road. I learned about equitable distribution, marital property, spousal support. I learned that hidden income from side ventures could shift the balance dramatically if proven, especially in Maine, where fault can be considered. Then I requested full credit reports for both of us. I found a credit card I didn't recognize, opened under a P.O. box she'd never mentioned. Small balance, but regular payments. I called the issuer, confirmed she was the sole holder. It was another lifeline to her other self. I logged it all, quietly, without rage, without accusations. Just data. Nina was methodical in her betrayal. So I'd be methodical in my response. Step 3 was infiltration. She came back after 5 days as planned. Said she missed the house, missed the garden, missed me. I said I wasn't ready to talk, but I didn't tell her to leave. Not yet. Letting her stay was a calculated risk, because the longer she lived in a home where the walls were shifting under her feet, the more disoriented she'd become. I watched how she moved through the house now slower, like she was walking on glass. She started asking me questions with subtle urgency. Are you okay? Do you still want to go to the Adirondacks in October? Are you thinking about leaving me? I gave her nothing clear, just vague kindness. A smile that didn't reach my eyes. A softness she couldn't parse. I knew it unnerved her, because uncertainty is a powerful mirror. And now, she was looking into her own face. Then came the final breadcrumb. I told her I was taking a solo weekend trip, a hiking loop in Baxter State Park. No signal, no contact, just trees and solitude. She nodded supportively, said it sounded healing. What she didn't know was that I'd booked a hotel in Portland. And while I was hiking, I paid a visit to someone who mattered very much. Will. Finding him wasn't hard. I already had the truck's plates, and through Grace's contacts, I traced him to a carpentry co-op that did custom builds along the Penobscot. I didn't go in. I waited outside, watched him load plywood into a van, laughed with his crew. He looked like a man who thought he'd stolen something that would never be missed. That was the moment I decided how the end would come, not with shouting, not with broken plates, but with exposure. Measured, undeniable, and devastating. She had spent years building a secret life in a cabin with warm lights and soft linens. Now I would tear it down, legally, socially, financially. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted truth. And I wanted it to echo. The first time Nina realized I wasn't going to scream, she seemed almost afraid. We were sitting in the sunroom on a gray Thursday morning. She was sipping chamomile tea, wearing a cardigan I gave her 2 Christmases ago. It still had the tiny thread pull in the cuff from when she brushed past a blackberry bush on our trip to Acadia. You're so quiet lately, she said. I know. She waited for more. She didn't get it. The thing about silence is it doesn't always mean surrender. Sometimes it's a countdown. And hers had just hit 0. I filed for divorce the next morning. Quietly. No announcement. No drawn-out discussion. I'd already spoken with Grace's firm, already collected the financial documents, already built the case. Adultery, hidden income, misuse of marital property. The filing included a signed affidavit outlining the affair, screenshots of the texts, drone images of her and Will at the cabin, property tax records proving unreported rentals, the photo of my bracelet, the one she used as a prop in her second life. All admissible, all irrefutable, and all now part of public record. But I didn't tell her yet. Instead, I waited one more day. Long enough for the court to process it. Long enough for her to breathe the last full day of our normal life. She gardened. She called a friend. She made soup and offered me a bowl. I thanked her and ate it slowly. The next morning, she got the envelope. I left it on the kitchen counter under her favorite mug, the one with the tree ring pattern she bought in Vermont. I went for a walk. Let her open it alone. When I came back, she was sitting at the table, the papers fanned out like a crime scene. You filed? She asked, voice hoarse. I did. You're not even going to talk to me first? I already did, Nina. You just weren't listening. She blinked. You blindsided me. No. You blinded yourself. Her eyes welled up. I watched her try to gather herself, to summon the grace she'd always worn like a silk scarf. But it was slipping. I could see the frayed edges of panic. I thought we were trying to fix things. No, I said calmly. You were trying to delay the fallout. There's a difference. She stood then, pacing the room, her hands flailing like static trying to find a signal. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Will was never supposed to be. A 4-year partner? I cut in. She froze. You know how long? I know everything. She tried the next predictable move, guilt. Not through shouting, that wasn't her style. She went for the softer weapon, self-pity. I've been lost, she whispered. I didn't know who I was anymore. I let the words hang. Then I said something I hadn't planned. Something true. You know what hurts the most? I asked. It's not the betrayal. It's that you took your solitude, the thing we both loved, and you turned it into a lie. You poisoned the woods. You made our silence dirty. She looked up at me, stunned. Then she sat down and started to cry. Not pretty tears. Not movie sobs. Real, Cracked open crying, the kind that comes from a person realizing their control is gone. I didn't touch her. I didn't comfort her. She'd built this moment, brick by secret brick. Now she got to sit inside it. That night, she left. Took 2 bags. Said she'd stay with her friend Amelia for a while. I nodded. Told her the lawyer would be in touch. She didn't hug me. Didn't ask me to stop her. She knew better now. As the taillights disappeared, I didn't feel triumphant. Just still. Like the woods after a storm. But I wasn't done yet. Because there was one more layer to this. The others. The clients. The women who paid for guided retreats in that same cabin. The ones who thought they were getting clarity in yoga poses in the forest, not sharing space with a woman in a romantic affair while she used the profits to build her fantasy. Nina hadn't just betrayed me. She deceived others to do it. So I started reaching out. Quietly. Selectively. Through Instagram, I messaged 3 women I knew had attended retreats with Nina, 2 from Vermont, 1 from Rhode Island. I phrased it gently. Hi, I'm reaching out privately as Nina's soon-to-be ex-husband. I'm trying to understand how she was using the Moosehead Lake cabin during wellness retreats. Can I ask a few questions? 2 responded. Both said the same thing. They paid in cash. They were told it was for an off-grid, guided self-discovery experience. They never signed liability waivers. They'd never seen a business license. And they never knew she was staying there with someone else. I thought she lived alone while we were there, one wrote. She told us to respect her private reflection hours. Said she'd be in another cabin nearby. But I did hear a man's voice one night. That was enough. I sent the details to Grace. She sent them to the IRS. The collapse came faster than I expected. Within 3 weeks, Nina was under financial review. Her hidden income, the cash payments, the cabin rentals, flagged her for audit. And with her business tied to unlicensed wellness retreats, the state board started asking questions too. Especially when they found out she wasn't insured. No certifications. No paperwork. She wasn't arrested. This wasn't criminal. But it was devastating to her brand. Her presence in the wellness community, carefully curated, softly lit, steeped in wildflowers and quotes about sacred stillness, cracked like cheap pottery. She deactivated her website. Her Instagram vanished. The sponsors who once sent her free mats and herbal teas? Gone. And Will? He ghosted her the moment the trouble started. I never reached out to him. Never needed to. Some men break things quietly. Some do it with a smile. But some, like him, just disappear when the fire gets too hot. Our divorce was finalized 90 days later. Grace secured a favorable split. I kept the house, the land, the truck. Nina walked away with her car, her personal savings, and nothing more. No spousal support. No claim to future assets. And that cabin? Gone. I bought the property. Through a shell LLC. Quietly. Paid cash. Frank Harmon, the original owner, was happy to sell. He said he was tired of renting to weird couples with too many secrets. I didn't correct him. The day it transferred, I drove out there alone. Walked up the porch steps. Looked through the window at the bed where she once lived her second life. And then I left. The next week, I handed the keys to a friend who ran a program for veterans dealing with PTSD. Told him to turn it into a free weekend retreat site. Something real. Something honest. The first time I slept through the night again, it rained. Not a hard rain. Just that steady, tapping kind that makes the roof hum like a lullaby. I woke up at 6:14 a.m. to silence inside, and soft percussion outside. No dreams. No clenched fists. No half-waking thoughts of what if she's lying again. Just me. In my house. Whole. The house had changed, in ways you'd only notice if you'd lived in it. Her scent was gone. That faint mix of sandalwood and lavender oil that used to cling to the upholstery. Her presence, once so carefully arranged across every surface. The crystals on the windowsill, the yoga straps on the doorknob, the stones aligned by chakra color on the entry table, was gone. I didn't just take down her things. I reclaimed the air. I started spending more time outdoors again. Real outdoors, not just the backyard, not just hikes to keep my mind busy. I went back to field work. Surveyed animal corridors near the Androscoggin River. Tagged foxes. Watched the migration of owls under a blood-orange dusk that didn't feel haunted anymore. One morning, while I was placing trail markers in a new study site, I spotted a coyote. Thin, scarred along the flank. It stared at me, not as prey or threat, just acknowledgement. Like it had walked through fire once too. I stood there for maybe 10 full minutes. No movement. No fear. We both walked away at the same time. I don't know what happened to Will. I didn't follow up. Didn't check. I figured Nina might reach out at some point, try to pull me into some post-mortem of our marriage. She didn't. Maybe because I made it clear in the divorce terms. There will be no contact. No phone calls. No texts. No shared circles. This is not separation. This is erasure. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she'd moved out of state. Western Massachusetts, maybe. Teaching workshops again, this time at a small co-op under a new name. I didn't care. She could reinvent herself 100 times. None of them would undo the version she burned with me. Her betrayal wasn't just physical. It was architectural. She rebuilt her life behind a wall of kindness and whispered mantras, and she thought I'd never notice the cracks. But I did, and I turned the entire structure into dust. The cabin stands, but it's not hers anymore. I renamed it Soul's Rest, short for solitude, a quiet gift to the veteran group I'd connected with. Every month, 2 or 3 of them go up there. They fish. They write. They sit with their ghosts in peace. No commercial bullshit. No curated Instagram posts. Just healing in a place that used to hide lies and now hosts truth. Last month, I visited and found a note left in the guest journal. I haven't slept a full night in 2 years. Last night I did. Thank you for this place. It meant more than I can explain. Because that cabin used to be a monument to my humiliation. Now it's a sanctuary, not just for me, but for people who've carried more than their share of pain. Grace told me something after the divorce was finalized. You didn't just win, she said. You rewrote the ending. Most people never get to do that. She was right. I didn't just move on. I made sure the ending meant something. There was a time I thought I'd grow old with Nina. Thought we'd tend our garden and argue about tea flavors and lie beside each other until we couldn't tell whose dreams belonged to whom. But she wanted more. Or less. Or something else entirely. She thought I'd fall apart when I found out. But I didn't. I evolved. Not out of spite. Not even out of anger. Out of survival. If you're listening to this wondering what you'd do in my shoes, if you found the second phone, or the weird receipts, or the changed scent on the pillow, let me tell you something. You don't need to explode. You don't need to win the argument. You need to observe. You need to collect. And when the time is right, you need to act with clarity. Not for revenge, but for dignity. Because the person who betrayed you already set the fire. You just get to decide how much you lose in the burn. It's late April now. The snow's gone. The foxes are back near the southern slope of my study area, same pair as last year, I think. I leave the camera rolling. I leave the cabin alone. And I don't wonder about her anymore. Because sometimes the best revenge is being the only one who made it out of the fire still yourself.